Imagine spending 10 to 12 hours a day parked in front of an Outlook calendar, fielding hundreds of email invitations from people and constituents from back home in the district who wanted some of our congressman's time. Add in the fact that the congressman I was working for was the first Vietnamese congressman in the history of Congress. And so he was very in demand, not just locally, but nationally and internationally. And there were speaking invitations to coordinate and dinner invitations and reception invitations, not to mention things like, committee meetings and votes. The entire point.
It was social and business.
Oh my goodness, fundraisers and making sure he had time for calls. I was planning his day from the moment he woke up in the morning until he went to sleep on the sofa in his office.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Anna Dearmon Kornick. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
So you are a time management consultant and a productivity expert for professionals and entrepreneurs, and your brand is All About Time. Tell us what All About Time is doing today.
Sure. So It's About Time really started from the need of just encountering so many busy professionals who were just strapped for time. There's no other way to put it, overwhelmed. And so today we are approaching episode 150 of It's About Time, my podcast about work, life, and balance. I am supporting nearly 100 members inside the It's About Time Academy, working with busy entrepreneurs and professionals one-on-one and through group coaching. And I am so excited to celebrate my very first book hitting the shelves in April of 2023.
Wow. That's amazing. So you say that you're on a mission to help busy professionals stop feeling overwhelmed and start spending time on what matters most. So you do that through what you just said, your consultancy, your academy, and your podcast, and now your book. I see that you say busy is not a badge of honor. Tell us what that means.
Oh, my goodness. I think that so many of us have a tendency, especially early in our careers, to get caught up in this hustle mindset and mentality. And we get this false belief that if we're not doing everything, then we're not doing enough.
Right.
And it becomes this point of pride to be spread too thin and strapped for time. And suddenly we believe that the busier we are, the more successful we are, when in the end, we're really just spinning our wheels. And we wake up and we realize we're not spending our time in the way that we really want to. And so I say busy is not a badge of honor. So let's just strip that off and get down to the heart of the matter.
And then things have changed so much over the years, over the last decade, for sure, with digital content and that overload. I know we'll get into that. But as a parent, I see it in children and people in that age of 15 to 25 or whatever, and it's just so much going on. So all that stuff just occupies time. I do want to start to dig into your journey, but I have to mention your website first because I am blown away by that. It is so impressive. It reminds me of Disney World. Seriously, when I looked at it and started to study it and just begin to, comprehend everything was there. That's what was going through my mind is Disney World. It looked like Walt Disney may have done this. It was so well done. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's creative. And there's so much information there. Testimonials and resources and images and media kits. It's complete in every way. And so incredibly impressive. Certainly the most impressive website for an individual's brand that I've ever seen.
Thank you so much.
And I know it took a lot of work.
It did. It did a lot of work, a lot of time, and getting to know the people who I'm trying to serve. Because in the end, my website's not for me; it's for them.
Yeah. So how did you do that?
How did I get to know the people that I want to...
No, specifically, how did you build that? How did you get that website done?
Sure. Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. I purchased a template for the platform Show It. That's my website platform, Show It, from an amazing designer named Elizabeth McCravey. She builds website templates that are specifically for creative service providers, which is what I like to call myself. I'm a creative service provider. And I took this amazing foundation that she put together with that template and just customized it to my brand. I have a very clear brand. It is blue on blue on blue, but it's also very professional, but also feminine because the majority of the individuals who I serve are female professionals. And so it just took a lot of time and setting aside intentional time to make those updates.
The branding is very strong. You mentioned the colors, the fonts and everything. We'll get into that. I was taken so much by your branding. I see it in the images and the clothes that you wear, your outfits and your office, images from your office and your home that I wore the outfit I have today in your honor, along with my blue-faced watch. That's how impressed I was.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about your path to becoming a time management consultant. You grew up in North Louisiana?
I did. I grew up in Winfield, Louisiana.
Wow. Yeah. And what was life like back in that day?
Oh, goodness. Winfield is your typical southern small town where life revolves around the Friday night lights at the football stadium. I was involved in every club that you could imagine, from dance team to track to Future Farmers of America. And you could find me one day in the pig barn feeding my pigs ahead of the parish fair, or on stage competing in a beauty pageant. I really did try to have the most well-rounded experience possible in my small town.
And were your parents instrumental in pointing you in that direction?
My mother is I can definitely say that she's my biggest cheerleader. And if it were not for her and the sacrifices that she made of her time in, being the mom taxi and carting me all over the state to different conferences and competitions and driving, to the pig barn in the morning so that we could feed the pigs before school. And I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up on a golf course. So I also have to mention that because I don't want you to have this picture of a farm girl in North Louisiana. It was just a really, really cool small town experience. And my mom always had a front row seat for everything except for speaking competitions, and she was not allowed in the room.
Because you would not allow her in the room?
Yes, she would make me so nervous, and so she always had to stand outside in the hallway and press her ear up against the door to hear me speak.
So you were always into public speaking?
I was. I actually won my first speaking competition when I was in 5th grade.
Oh, that's fantastic. So was LSU always a site for you as far as college?
It was. I didn't apply anywhere else. That was the only place that I wanted to go.
Likewise. And a degree in public relations. So what did you do with that? Where did you go with that?
Sure.
Where did you start?
Funny enough, I wanted to go to law school. That's the path that I had pictured for myself. I had a minor in agricultural business, and so I expected to be, wheeling and dealing in a business suit as a high-powered attorney. But I got bitten by the political bug pretty early on. I actually ran for student body vice president my senior year. Did not win, but it was still an amazing experience. And after spending a summer interning in D.C. On Capitol Hill in a congressman's office, I had the opportunity to jump on a statewide political campaign right after graduation and didn't look back.
Wow. And so you ended up in D.C.?
I did. My first job, you could say, big job, real job, was as a scheduler to a United States congressman.
Therein is the underlying time management element, right?
That's where it all begins.
And so what was that job like? Any good stories from there?
Imagine spending 10 to 12 hours a day parked in front of an Outlook calendar, fielding hundreds of email invitations from people and constituents from back home in the district who wanted some of our congressman's time. Add in the fact that the congressman I was working for was the first Vietnamese congressman in the history of Congress. And so he was very in demand, not just locally, but nationally and internationally. And there were speaking invitations to coordinate and dinner invitations and reception invitations, not to mention things like, committee meetings and votes, the entire point.
It was social and business.
Oh my goodness, fundraisers and making sure he had time for calls. I was planning his day from the moment he woke up in the morning until he went to sleep on the sofa in his office, because he was a congressman who chose to, instead of getting an apartment, sleep in his office.
Right. And so how long did you do that?
I was only in D.C. in that role for about 6 months, which I learned is somewhat common for Hill staffers. You spend a short time in these positions and you either decide, I want to stick around and I want to move up the ranks and become a legislative director or a chief of staff. But me, I started to miss home. The way I felt about it was that D.C. was the one place I could live where I didn't feel like I was cheating on Louisiana because I was working for a Louisiana congressman. But I started to miss my grandmother's homemade mayhaw jelly. And I started to miss just the really good Louisiana food. I lived in D.C. for one crawfish season, and that was enough.
So you made it back home, and you got into crisis communications? Is that right?
I did.
And what is that?
Oh, goodness. Crisis communications is oil spills and hurricanes and droughts and floods. And so often my early roles in crisis communication were in state government positions. In communications roles, I was the communications director to Lieutenant Governor Scott Angel when he was interim lieutenant governor. During that time, he was also the Louisiana's liaison to the federal government for the BP oil spill.
Oh, wow.
And so in that role, that normally does the fun stuff of tourism and culture and recreation, I was writing congressional testimony about the oil spill and trying to revive the tourism industry and the industry along Louisiana's coastline that was devastated because of the BP oil spill. There were a lot of moratoriums on oil and gas in the Gulf at that point, and so we built coalitions among those secondary service providers that were supporting the oil and gas industry, because there was this trickle-down effect of just economic breakdown. And so that was, you could say, my first foray into crisis communications, because we were navigating this national, international news, and then that led into other opportunities to manage crises from there.
Yeah. I've read where you said you're creating order out of chaos.
Yes.
Day in and day out.
Yes, that was what it felt like.
But it's stressful, right?
It was.
Over time.
It was. When you are working in a state government position and you are constantly navigating crises that affect hundreds of thousands of people. And then when you're in, so after working for the state, I moved into a role with an agency, and I was on their crisis team. And my work was always with people who were in their darkest moments. Their business was on the line. Their reputation was on the line, and it's heavy. And you bring so much of yourself and your strategy and your experience to these roles, and you want nothing more than to help these people work their way out of it, you can't help but become invested, and you can't help but stay up at night thinking, and your mind is turning about, okay, what else can we do? How can we kill that story?
How could you turn it off?
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And that's where things went wrong. Some might say I liked navigating the crisis a little bit too much, and so that it began to creep into all areas of my life. Suddenly I was missing really important family events. I missed my stepdad's 70th birthday party because I had a work issue that kept me from being there. There's a family photo on the wall, framed family photo in our dining room from that event. Everyone in my family is in it except for me. And I look at that and I think about just how wrapped up I was in my work. I was missing baby showers. I was that person who had to step out of rooms to take calls. And you know what's so funny? Is that when I was a lot younger, I always looked at that person who was stepping out to take a call as, that's what I want to do. I want to be that important person who has to step out and take the calls.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I saw that there was so much, or I perceived that there was so much worth in that person for being in demand and needed. And then when I was that person, clearly it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be.
It sounds like we're heading towards burnout.
Oh, yes, we are. Yes, we are.
How did that transpire?
I actually did my best to try and get away from crisis communications. And I actually took a job managing marketing for a museum. I thought, there's no such thing as museum crisis.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to think that's on the other end of the spectrum.
Exactly.
Right?
I thought this is going to be low key. This is going to be really enjoyable. Little did I know that people can create a crisis out of the wrong color red ink on a gala invitation, or a misplaced piece of art from some collection. And because I still held on to so many of those habits, those bad habits that I had picked up while in crisis communication, the same exact pattern continued for me.
Really?
At the museum, to the point where I was working all the time. Constant disorganization, no boundaries. I worked at the end of a cinder block hallway. So I had cinder blocks on all sides of me except for one. No door. So my coworkers just came at any moment to barge in and ask me for something. I tried so hard to implement healthy practices, and just left and right, my plans were thwarted. And so after one too many mornings spent either crying in my Jeep in the parking lot, or just having to take deep breaths in the stairwell on the way up to my cave, I knew something had to change. I didn't know what, but I knew that something had to give so that I could just stop everything and get a handle on this. Yeah. And so my last day in that role, I'll never forget, we had this fabulous museum gift shop. I should have worn it today, but I walked downstairs and I bought this gorgeous bracelet by Mimosa Handcrafted, Baton Rouge artisan, with a pelican on it. And for me, it just symbolized this freedom, okay, I am going to figure out what my next move is. Don't know what it is, but I'm going to tell this story one day of walking away and finding the better way.
It's really interesting because some people will plan their exit and they got to have that next thing. You have an idea of what it is or have it well developed. And you, Miss Planner, just walked away. So you didn't know, literally didn't know what you were going to do next?
I told people that I was going to freelance, because that's really all that I knew of. I will tell you this, though. One of the days that I was just so frustrated and fed up, I walked back into the building after, going on a walk to get a coffee, walked back into the building, went up to my desk, and I filed for an LLC on the Louisiana Secretary of State's website. ADK Strategies, LLC. Had no idea what I was going to do with it. But I just had to, I have an LLC. We've got to figure this out. I figured strategies was
covered your bases,
broad enough that I could figure it out. I had that political background. I had the PR background. We'll do some strategies. We'll figure it out.
Hannis T. Bourgeois provides accounting services, litigation support, as well as tax and assurance services to companies and individuals throughout the region. With offices in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, New Orleans, and Hammond, their team of professionals have a wide range of specialized expertise and give personalized attention to each client they work with. HTB serves all types of business structures, including corporations, private businesses, startups, individuals, and more. So call them today to learn how they can help you. Reach out to them by phone or learn more at their website, www.htbcpa.com. A little testimonial here. HTB has been my accounting firm for over 30 years, and have guided my initial company from startup to expanding to numerous operating companies. HTB has provided guidance in helping us expand across the U.S., doing business in more than 30 states. Flat out, HTB has made all the difference in the world to our business. This podcast is sponsored by NAI Latter Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Latter Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.latterblum.com. TurnKey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. ADK Strategies sounds like, man, you knew what you were doing, right?
I was trying.
Yeah. What did that look like?
Goodness. Okay, so I walked away from that museum role and immediately got married. So my last day was about 2 weeks before our wedding. And so my husband I don't think he realized, or I don't think he quite expected to go into this marriage together with an unemployed wife. But he's always been so incredibly supportive. And even though I was on our honeymoon reading business books and taking notes about what I hope to do once we get back, again, he was very supportive. But I got back, we got back home, and I made a list. I started by making a list of all of the different contacts and relationships that I had made over the last 10 years. And I started reaching out to people. Hey, I'm looking for something to do in the communications marketing world. What do you know of anything? And all of that reaching out, which you really have to kind of swallow your pride for a little bit, and just kind of step into it open-minded. I got a few opportunities to, again, get back into the political world. I did a little bit here, a little bit there. I was the campaign manager to a statewide Secretary of State's race, which was quite an adventure. Not something that I talk about often, but just that was an adventure in and of itself.
You're right back in the saddle, right?
I did.
Doing the same thing.
I went straight back into that world of...
But that's what you knew.
It is. That's what I knew. But one thing that I did is I got certified to be a Myers-Briggs type indicator practitioner. Okay, so the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is a personality assessment that really helps you drill down into your innate preferences about how you get your energy, how you make decisions, what type of information you need to make decisions, and your orientation to the world is how they describe it. Funny enough, I was checking my spam folder one day, and there was an email in my spam folder telling me all about this workshop coming to New Orleans where I could become a trained Myers-Briggs practitioner. And I thought, hey, let's do it. Why not? So I became a trained Myers-Briggs practitioner. And while I was there, they asked us to break ourselves up into groups based on how we plan to use Myers-Briggs. Were we a coach? Were we a counselor? Or were we an other? And so I went and sat with the other groups because I wasn't going to be a counselor. And I thought the coaches were like, what even is coaching? It's like consulting, but not. And so I went and sat with the other. And I remember having a conversation at the table where we were talking about how we wanted to use it. And I said, I want to use this to help people manage their time better, to help women who are overwhelmed manage their time better, because I had so many friends who were overwhelmed. And someone told me, that's not a thing. And I said, okay, we'll see. So while I was there, I built some really good relationships with the coaching table and was offered an opportunity to do a complimentary coaching session with a woman named Elizabeth. And I said, sure, let's do it. During that coaching session, my mind was blown. My life was changed. And within 2 weeks, I had researched and identified a coaching school that I could become a certified coach. So I am actually a certified executive coach through the World Coach Institute. Again, thought, okay, we've got Myers-Briggs. I've got this time management background. I'm now a coach. Let's see what we can do with this.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you really gravitated to something that made sense to you and seemed very different from what you were doing in a way. How did you get to the point where you refined that into a business and you created It's About Time?
Sure. So for the longest time, I called myself a leadership coach. I say for the longest time, it was about a year, because remember, helping people with time management as a coach, that's not a thing. And so I called myself a leadership coach who talked about time management.
Right.
And it just didn't feel right. It didn't land. I had a weekly newsletter called The Leadership Note where I blogged and I shared a different blog post, and it was fine. It was nice. I didn't have any clients, but I also didn't really have any offerings yet either. I was still kind of dabbling in that political world because that's what paid the bills.
Right.
And then I decided, okay, it's really time to put up or shut up. Let's figure this out and let's make this work. Let's make this coaching tuition do something. Let's make this real. And so then I worked with a coach. I did 5 sessions with a coach who helped me just make the decision. Sometimes that's all you need is you need that unbiased sounding board who can say back to you in a synthesized way what it is you're trying to verbally process. Right. And I'll never forget, it was May 22nd, 2019 in the office in our home. I stood up, put my foot down and said, I am a time management coach. I am a time management coach. Wow. Not I am going to be, I am a time management coach. And I started talking about it on Instagram. I was a coach. Why can't I call myself a time management coach? And so that's when everything started to flip. That was in May.
So cool.
And I would just use the only platform I had, which was really Instagram. Right. And I would record videos of myself sharing tips about this and that. This is how I set my goals. This is how I organize my to-do list. And someone reached out and said, how can I work with you? And I said, I'll send you an email. And then I had to figure out what a package was really going to look like.
Yeah. Like, what were you going to charge? What services were you going to provide, and give them options?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so I put something together. We got started. I set up a a program. I use a tool called Dubsado that manages contracts and questionnaires and scheduling and things like that. So I thought, all right, let's do it. Got a free trial, got it all set up, had contracts, and just made it happen. I had my first client. I learned so much from her along the way, and the materials that I created as we went along, because I would say, okay, what is it? What are you most struggling with? And then I would create materials that spoke to that need. And I still use those materials with clients today. So it was an amazing, amazing foundation, amazing first start. I'm still so grateful to that very first client for having that trust and belief in me, because it really was the catalyst for everything that came next.
You know what's interesting is your product is time management and gains in productivity, right? Yet it's wrapped in this beautiful package of your brand, which I'm guessing is something that you built over time. But you have an element of design, creativity, and control, along with a great brand understanding. And it's throughout all your digital products. It's in your clothes and the images that I've seen online of your house and your office, and it's complete in every way. And it's not just the color. You mentioned the blue on blue on blue. It's it's the fonts. It's everything, and it's so well done. I almost was sitting there going, okay, is that time management? If you were good at time management, is this what it would look like? But I was like, no, that's the brand. Time management is the services that you sell. I was really intrigued with how those two came together. It's very good. It's very thorough and complete. So where do you think that comprehensive understanding of branding came from?
Listening. I have always been someone who loves to ask questions. In the early days, when I thought that I was going to be a leadership coach, I created a survey and sent it to all of my friends, asking questions like, how would you explain to someone what I do? And where do you like to shop? And what are your favorite accounts to follow on Instagram? If I gave you $1,000 for professional development or personal development, how would you spend it? Lots of questions like that from friends, because I didn't really have clients yet. And so, but I knew that those friends, those were the women, those were the people who were struggling, who were trying to figure out how to transition from being a working professional to a working professional with a baby, or a mom of toddlers who was trying to run a business. And that was what really formed the foundation for the early brand and the way that I wanted to present myself. And one of the strategic decisions that I made very early on was working with a brand designer. So even before I made the decision that I am a time management coach, I worked with a brand designer to come up with a cohesive brand package, the colors, the hex codes, the fonts, the usage, all of it, that was crafted early on because I knew that I needed to have that consistency for myself so that I wasn't trying to constantly recreate the wheel, and consistency builds trust. And when you think about time management, one of the effects of good time management is feeling calm and feeling consistent in your routines, in how you live your life and manage your time. And so I knew that I needed to have a brand that was consistent, so that whenever the people who are overwhelmed look for help, that they look to the person who displays consistency.
So I imagine another element of time management is understanding what you're good at and efficient at, and then farming out what you're not, and using quality vendors to help you deliver on your package. So you mentioned toddlers. You have two yourself, right?
I do.
See, there's this common theme with the women entrepreneurs that we have on our podcast. Mm-hmm. And no one has ever complained about this, but it really is clear to me that they just have more to do as a mom. Mm-hmm. They just do. Cindy McGee is the latest episode, an entrepreneur in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And like you, she is very good at communicating some of the lifestyle type realities of being an entrepreneur and a mom. And there is more there. I mean, it seems like growing a business while you're raising a family And then I think you moved a couple of times in a couple of years on top of that.
We have, yes.
It would seem that you're in a very good occupation at that point as far as time management. But how did you do that?
First of all, getting clear on what my big vision is. Because knowing what it is that I'm working toward helps me make decisions day to day about the best and highest use of my time. And then when you think about the best and highest use of my time, yes, I post on social media, on LinkedIn on a regular basis, but I'm not the one that's scheduling the post, because scheduling content into a tool is not my best and highest use of time. Creating themes for content, writing podcast episodes, that is service. That is an appropriate use of my time.
Highest and best use.
Highest and best use. So it's understanding what's the long-term vision in those decisions for day to day. And then what are those things that either only I can do, or what are those things that I can easily outsource to someone else?
You mentioned scheduling. And so your podcast, you mentioned you're on episode like 150?
We're a few episodes away from 150. I believe this week is 144. So we're almost there.
But you continued those throughout the birth of your children and the weeks and months that followed. That was all planned well in advance, where you had content pre-recorded and then scheduled out.
That's right. When I launched It's About Time, my podcast, in December of 2020, I made the decision from day one, I am in this for the long haul. This is the way to learn from me for free. Mm-hmm. And I have never missed more than 1 week from publishing an episode ever. And that takes making the commitment up front and figuring out where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. So how far in advance would you be in recording in some instances?
I will admit that only in the last few months have we really gotten into a great groove with having content planned out and recorded. I can say that as of right now, we have through episode 153, so that's almost 10 episodes planned out, but I haven't recorded Monday's episode yet.
I see.
So we have all the content planned and we have the script written, but this is actually my batch content week. And so that's something we can talk about too, is having theme weeks. I use theme weeks to plan my time. This is a content week. I have 5 other podcast interviews with other shows this week because I do my best to batch that content creation into 1 week.
Oh, that's fascinating. Really kind of wanted to dive a little bit into your 3 avenues, your consultancy, the academy, and the podcast. And you've touched on some of this stuff with the consultancy side of it. Is it mainly businesses, or are you doing individuals as well?
It's actually primarily individuals.
Okay.
I do have a speaking and workshop arm of the business, you could say, where I give virtual workshops to companies all over the country, and I'll do workshops for teams, so that I am working with companies. But when it comes to the It's About Time Academy, when it comes to my one-on-one coaching, I'm working primarily one-on-one with either professionals, early executives, and business owners.
And so are those done mainly in person, or are you using Zoom or Teams for a lot of that?
Actually, whenever I work one-on-one for coaching, I just use a good old-fashioned phone call.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I find that, I don't know if this is the case for you. I'll say it's the case for me. When I'm on a Zoom call, I tend to get distracted by looking at myself in the picture. And I just want my client to be able to show up if they have, messy hair, no makeup, t-shirt, whatever, and just feel like they can be vulnerable and share whatever is on their mind.
Yeah, that's good. I do a call every month with a guy out of Austin, Clay Boykin. We do Zoom. Mm-hmm. It works for us because we're 2 old guys, right? So we're not too worried about what we look like. In your one-on-one conversations, do you see a lot of commonalities that impact business owners as far as time management or productivity goes? I mean, are there a million lanes for that, or are there some things that are really some commonalities there?
The way that I look at time management is that I have it broken out into 3 different milestones. And these are the same 3 milestones that we work through in one-on-one coaching and within the It's About Time Academy. Milestone 1 being vision and values. Milestone 2 being plan your path. This is getting clear on those priorities and those goals. And then milestone 3 is almost like a maintenance phase where you use the HEART method. You live with HEART, which stands for habits, energy, attention, recharge, and time to continue following through and living those vision and values. And in talking with companies, individuals, professionals from all walks of life, you can categorize nearly any time management struggle into one of those 3 milestones. I feel stuck. I hate my job. I don't know what I want to do next. Okay, let's get clear on your vision and values. I'm floundering. I know what I want to do. I don't know how to get there. All right, let's get clear on your priorities and your goals. How do I actually follow through with my goals? I have them. They're just written down on paper. All right, let's build these habits. Let's make sure that you're time blocking, that you're operating with an ideal week, and that you're getting enough rest.
Yeah, that is good stuff. I was curious about different age groups of people, boomers and Gen Xers and millennials. And I'm not sure how many millennials you would have that you consult with, but are there differences? Do the 3 silos you just mentioned cover all generations, or do you find that you communicate differently with the boomers and Gen Xers and millennials?
You know, what's amazing is that when I create a podcast episode, I am primarily using examples from my own life. So I am a millennial. I think I'm considered an elder millennial. And yet, when I opened up complimentary one-on-one coaching calls, I had members of Gen Z who were in their early 20s saying, I listen to your podcast every single week and it makes me feel understood. Even though I'm talking about a morning routine with a toddler and they're just trying to navigate their work from home life from their apartment in San Francisco. On the other end of the spectrum, one of my most successful group coaching clients is a retiree military wife who is an empty nester. And she said, Anna is in a very different place in life than I am, but I can take her examples and make them fit my own life. And so that has been just really, really amazing to see that my examples are connecting with people. Now, their execution of the strategies might look different. Someone who is older may prefer a more analog way of managing their time, whereas someone who's younger wants to know, what app do I need to have? But in the end, the strategies and tactics are the same.
Yeah. Pivotal is pleased to sponsor the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Pivotal is a commercial building contractor that performs new building construction, building maintenance, tenant improvements, renovations, and additions. Pivotal has been in business for over 25 years. The Pivotal team is simply the best. They have an impeccable safety record and they crush schedules. A focus on quality and professional communication is at the root of their success. Pivotal also performs programs for clients who build in multiple markets with current projects in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. If you are looking for the perfect addition to your project team, a contractor who can deliver the results you need to succeed, Pivotal is a one. When it's critical, call Pivotal. They can be found online at pivotalperforms.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm, offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. So, Anna, you have gotten a lot of very impressive media coverage lately. The Washington Post, Inc. magazine, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Business Insider magazine. What kind of feedback did you get from that? And did you notice any impact to your business? Did it lead to work?
Definitely. And thank you, by the way. I am very, very proud of all of those media placements. As a former PR pro who has placed and who has pitched for others, it's really exciting, and I'm very proud to have those quotes that are about my work and the way that I serve, instead of, sharing about whatever drought situation is in whatever place in Louisiana.
It's just so incredibly impressive.
I've gotten different types of feedback. One piece of feedback that I actually got from a writer herself is that she said, I found you through a Google search. Your SEO must be really great. Okay. And so that's not directly tied to business revenue or new clients, but having that validation that I had done something right in terms of my website copy and the metadata and all of that stuff that goes into SEO for this, random Washington Post writer to have found me just by doing a Google search for time management coach. Hey, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Huge win. We are very, very in tune with our podcast analytics. That is something that I try not to look at 10 times a day. Sometimes I have to hold myself back. But we are we're always watching podcast analytics, and we're looking for, when are there upticks? When do we see a jump in downloads? And almost always we are able to track an article's publication with an increase in downloads. Sure. And so I am absolutely seeing that correlation to the media coverage. But the authority that comes with being featured in those publications, I really think has contributed to the quality of podcast pitches that I've gotten from people who want to be guests on the show. I've seen an uptick in speaking invitations, and none of that would have been possible without setting a goal to get more media coverage. And that doesn't just typically happen. Yes, I was very, very fortunate to have that SEO that helped that Washington Post writer find me. And that was really the catalyst that showed me, oh, you can land more hits like this. Let's be intentional about these pieces and see what happens.
So the interesting thing about the podcast is it's a free product, right? So you're making an investment. You're making a lot of investment in your time, the editing, getting it just right, the writing. You have some guests, you're scheduling. There's a lot of energy and effort goes into that. Is there any particular revenue that you're extracting from that podcast experience, or is it all business development?
For the longest time, it was all business development. It was a loss leader in the business, and it was very, very worthwhile because my clients, my members of the It's About Time Academy would find me through the podcast and decide, hey, I want more. I want to keep learning. Let me join the It's About Time Academy. I recently opened up fall spots for one-on-one coaching. Every single person who signed up for a complimentary call, in my survey question, because I love to ask questions, how did you find out about Anna? I listened to the podcast. I heard her on the podcast. I'm a subscriber to the podcast. And so I know that while I may not be getting a check from putting this podcast out week after week, it is translating into new clients. Very recently, we did start to dabble in some sponsorship programs. Basecamp was one of my sponsors this past month, which is a really great partnership because they're a task management platform for businesses. We're looking at other opportunities like that to have an independent sponsorship program. But for the most part, it really just serves as business development for the
that's
business.
Great. So you mentioned the Academy again. Can you walk us through the different type packages that you have that start at the Academy level? How does that work?
Yes. So the It's About Time Academy is a membership program. It's a membership where members will join on a monthly basis or an annual basis. And as a member of the It's About Time Academy, they have access to an online community of other go-getters who are getting things done, is the way that I like to put it. But it's a community of individuals of all ages, walks of life, different professions that support each other and cheer each other on. And so it's really great for those people who are looking for that additional support, inspiration, motivation, and a community. The It's About Time Academy also gets access to a private podcast. I took the free podcast model, and realized that, okay, if these listeners want the next step of It's About Time, I essentially take what would be a course all about the HEART method, those 3 milestones I shared with you. And every month I release a series of private podcast episodes. This month is goal month. And so I released 4 episodes that were all about the why, the how, the what, and the what's next of goal setting.
So that's a podcast on top of a podcast.
It is.
Oh my goodness.
It is.
That's exhausting.
But it's not.
I mean, it seems exhausting too.
Right. It's not.
To a boomer.
And then the It's About Time Academy also has a monthly live coaching call. And so every third Thursday of the month at noon Central, all the members join me for a live Zoom call that's just open Q&A. And so if someone has a question about how can I make this goal more specific, or I am having trouble organizing my Google Drive files, whatever it is, they bring it. How can I feel more energized whenever I'm exhausted after my kids are keeping me up all night? We talk through it.
Yeah. What I found interesting relating to that on your website is the resources. And it's really interesting because I think you list 6 or 8 there that may be apps or software that you'll use. Just those are some of the things that are the tools that help you to be more efficient. And all that's there for free and just advice and recommendations. So
it is.
That is really cool. You've been doing a lot of speaking. I suspect that you thoroughly enjoy that.
I do. I do.
What do you enjoy most about that?
Oh my goodness. It's almost difficult to put into words, but if there is a stage, I want to be on it. I do. Just something about getting up on stage and just talking with my hands. It just fills me up. It's just where I feel like I belong.
Well, you have a lot to tell, right? You have a lot to share.
I do. I love sharing. And if I can, help someone think about something in a new way, or if I can share an example or a dumb mistake from my own life so they don't have to make it, and then make them laugh along the way, that's great. I love it. Just being on stage, speaking, sharing. It's not about sharing my story, but it's about sharing just relatable things, and then teaching along the way. I always say, I am not one of those fluff speakers that's going to give you 3 vague points. If you have me speak, your audience is going to walk away knowing how to time block, knowing how to use task batching, how to apply the laundry method to their life.
Yeah. So on your website, there's it's so impressive that there's clear ways for people to engage with you in all of your offerings, including speaking. And, you have some signature speeches there that could apply to so many different audiences. But it's so well done. It's almost like it's built to have a personal assistant built into the website because it's so clear on how people can engage with you. I wanted to talk about your book.
Okay.
Because on top of everything that you're doing, raising a family and all these amazing offerings you're doing in your business, You have written a book. You mentioned it's coming out in April. Tell us what that is like. Every single person that I've ever spoken to that wrote a book made it very clear about how extremely difficult that task is. Grateful to have gotten through it. So what is your experience with that?
It's so funny, and I know you won't be able to relate to this, but now that I have completely submitted the manuscript, we are still in the editing phase at this point, but it kind of reminds me of childbirth a little bit, because it is so hard, and it's harder than you think it's going to be, and it's more time consuming than you think it's going to be. But after you've submitted it and you're a few weeks, you're like, that wasn't so bad. I could do it again. Like, let's do more books. Let's have a whole family of books. Honestly, that's what it's like.
Yeah, that's funny. And that's how some families end up with a big family, right?
Right.
I'm one of 7, so I guess that's what it looked like around my house. What is the book about?
It's called Time Management Essentials. And it's so neat because it's a part of a series called Business Essentials by McGraw-Hill. And so McGraw-Hill, they've created this series of books for business owners. The first 3 books in the series are publishing this October. They should be out any day now. Communication Essentials, Presentation Essentials, and Coaching Essentials.
All different authors? All different authors,
all different experts in their field. And then my book is the 4th book in the series.
No kidding. Mm-hmm. That's very impressive. So Are you already thinking about that? You mentioned, other books or family of books. Is that in the vision?
Absolutely. Last year, so I'm a vision board person. Last year on my vision board, I had the word author, all caps, big letters, author. And I knew that I wanted to write a book. Last year was a really tough year. I had my second daughter. I had to kind of press pause in my business for a little while. Kept the podcast going because that was key. We moved. Just a lot happened in 2021, and so I really put that goal on the back burner. Put it back front and center on my 2022 vision board, and I gave myself 3 months to put together a book proposal. Q1 book proposal. So I read a book called The Weekend Book Proposal, all about how to structure a book proposal. I got started, and then you could say life happened. Life always happens, right? A lot of different things happened, and it was a few weeks until the end of March. So Q1's almost over. I did not have a book proposal. And I was just, okay, I'm going to have to shelve this until the fall because I had other plans that needed to be executed in Q2 and Q3. And then the most amazing thing happened. So I am someone who loves to just reach out to people on Instagram or on LinkedIn, not in a creepy way, but there I came across an editor who specialized in business books for women. And she said in her profile, I love championing women in business. So I thought, hey, what's the worst that could happen? I reached out to her and I introduced myself and said, hey, I love what you're doing. And I never do this, but I just wanted to say hi. Just wanted to say hey. And yeah, nothing happened. Didn't hear anything back from her. 6 months later, it's the last week of March, last week of Q3, she reaches out and says, oh my gosh, I am just seeing this message. Thank you so much for reaching out. Have you ever wanted to write a book? I might have the perfect project for you.
Oh, you're kidding.
And that's how it happened.
Wow, that is amazing. As we begin to wrap this up, I wanted to talk about social media and how well you have managed that, how big a part of it is for your business day in and day out, what platforms you're on.
Sure.
Your main thing is Insta.
Mm-hmm. Main thing's Insta. Love Instagram. I'll say that my perspective on social media and how I show up has changed over time. Once I learned the difference between showing up as a creator versus a consumer, it really shifted my relationship with how much time I spend on Instagram. And so whenever I open the app, I always ask myself, am I being a creator in this moment, or am I being a consumer? Because if I'm being a creator or a connector, I am getting online with the intention of building relationships, commenting, actually taking in people's content instead of just, scrolling and checking it out. And if I get on and I say, oh, I'm being a consumer, I'm able to, with intention, consume and then get off, get in, get out. And so Instagram, I'm also somewhat active on LinkedIn, but you have to show up where your audience is. Right. And the people that I want to work with, they're on Instagram. And I know this from all those surveys I did. Yeah. And I know that from asking questions and from paying attention, that's where I can create the type of content that Instagram likes. That just speaks to my audience. You've got that combination of video and still shots, and you can educate, and it's a lot of fun.
TikTok, do you do any of that?
I have a TikTok account. It's one of those things where you can either put a little bit of your time and energy in 37 different places, or you can just go strong in a few. That's what I really choose to do.
That sounds like a time management hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's part of a lot of people's problems is spreading yourself too thin, trying to be everywhere, trying to be everything for everybody. And tell us what is next. What is next for Anna Kornick and for It's About Time?
Sure. So what's next? Goodness, heading toward episode 150 is really exciting. I have no plans for the podcast to go anywhere because not only do I love it, it's just such an amazing service and way to connect with others.
It's almost like I think of it as a business development tool, but you couldn't survive without it.
No.
Right? I mean, it is completely connected with your business. Mm-hmm. And that is so cool because you're providing content. I'm always intrigued with that when content creators are putting content out there that has real value and they're giving it away. But it's for obvious good reason. You're building connections, relationships, trust, and all the things you've mentioned.
And if that's what I'm giving away for free, imagine how good the paid stuff is.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm also really excited to launch a YouTube channel in November. So that's a new medium that I'm excited to dive into. I mentioned early on that this is my content batching week. So I have 5 YouTube scripts that I'll be filming on Thursday in order to start scheduling out consistent YouTube, because so much really is video oriented. And as much as I love the podcast, I can't exactly throw my calendar up on a screen and walk someone through how I time block. And so I'm really excited about the visual element of YouTube and what's to come with that. Really excited to be launching a new series of, you could call it a boot camp after the first of the year. You know that most people give up on New Year's resolutions by January 17th. And so on January 17th, I'm planning to kick off a systems boot camp to take back your calendar and take back your to-do list to finally clear all of those photos off of your phone, right? And then I'll be celebrating the book launch in April.
So I did watch one of your podcast episodes last night, and it was about the information diet, and talking about some of the things we've talked about here in the last hour, which is just having so much digital content overload and tricks of how you can go through a diet to rid some of that. I'm convinced there's just so much energy and inefficiency and wasted time with social media. It may replace, you may have watched television otherwise, or it may replace something else that you were doing that wasn't terribly productive, but I found that very interesting. Just like real info, you can set a timer on your phone to alert you if you've been on Instagram for 10 minutes or whatever.
I do. I get that alert. If I've been on Instagram for 10 minutes without switching something, I get an alert.
Yeah.
And then if I spend 15 minutes cumulatively across the day, so maybe 2 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 3 minutes there, once I hit that 15-minute mark, I get a notification that says you've hit your limit for the day.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's really great to have that jolt, that reminder, because you really can get lost. I mean, those apps are built to suck us in and give us that dopamine hit every time we see something new and novel. And I think that, first of all, once you're aware that they're built to keep you sucked in, I don't know about you, but I want to beat it. I want to beat the app. Like, no, you're not going to suck me in. I'm in control here, not you. But it's easy. I mean, my mom even referred to Instagram. She says it's like a magazine that never ends. And it's true. Where we used to sit and look at magazines, Instagram is like a magazine that never ends. Sure. So you got to be careful.
Yeah. But it seems that throughout all of your content are real hacks, life hacks and suggestions that are very, very relevant. So, look, it's a great privilege for me to do this podcast because I get to meet so many rock stars, and you are just so incredibly impressive in all that you're doing. I wish you continued success in everything that you have planned, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
For those who watch our podcasts frequently, you'll notice there's been a number of guests that have described themselves as being ADD or struggling with focus. Some as describe themselves as tornadically entrepreneurial. And I know for myself what that struggle with focus can be like as an entrepreneur. And it's so refreshing to have Anna come in and share with us her thoughts about time management and focus and productivity gains. I would encourage all of our listeners to check out Anna Dearmon Kornick's website. It's about time. And it is amazing the content that she has there and all the different ways that you can engage in all of her different offerings. So extremely impressive. She's a very impressive lady, and we're glad that she made time to come on our podcast. So we appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.